Just getting the word out. So, just wanted to post a few places. Get the word out. Okay. Let's make sure all my windows are set up and ready to go. Just wanted to start the stream early, see if we get, some people in here. And maybe help out. So, let's see. What the first thing we want to cover is, I want this to be a sort of a soup to nuts covering of XML modding. I get a lot of questions on how to mod the game, what to put where, how the files work, how things tie together in the back end, and some syntax things regarding how XML works and how Xpath works. I know I've got a tutorial video already, but I don't really cover in depth any specific topic, because there's really no way to do that in a 20-minute video or a 60-minute video. There's just no way to cover that much detail. So what we're going to do is I'm going to run down a lot of these XML files. This is a 7 days to die data config. There's a lot of XML files in here. We're not going to cover all of them, but some of the main ones, or most of the main ones, we're going to cover. Really important ones, and how to mod them. The first thing I want to cover, though, is XML itself. So everybody who watches this later, or needs a little help understanding when I say node or when I say attribute, what that actually means. So we're going to start with a blank canvas here, as you could say, and we're going to say this. We're going to say, let's see, let's just do this. Any text here / any text here. Okay, this is what is called a root node. The first XML tag that you see is the root node. And if we go into, let's say, biomes.xml, I do have the size of the text greatly increased here. Normally I'd look at this at about right here, but since I'm streaming, I wanna get this covered. So Biomes XML, you can see right here, world generation. That is your root node right there. If we go to the very end of the file, you can see /world generation. So that is your root node. That is what everything is based off of. And that will become important when we look at XPath modding. So think of the root node as just the anchor for the entire document. And that is how you base everything from there. Now, the way to look at XML is any sort of directory structure, because nodes can have subnodes. They can have, nodes that have nodes that have nodes. There's really no limit to how deep you can go. So inside here, we could have another node with / another node. So that is right there a node called another node. Inside of that, we can have yet another, and / yet another. Okay, so that again is another node, and then we can have inside of here something else, and then / something else. Okay, so you can have nodes within nodes. You can have subnodes that have other nodes. It's just think of an XML node as a folder. So if we look at this, where 7 days actually exists, look at XML nodes as these folders. Inside of a folder, you can have a whole lot of other stuff. Each one of these is its own XML node as well. So that's the best way that I can describe XML. It really is, because from here, it doesn't get too much more complicated. The other thing that we're going to want to cover is attributes. And an attribute, if we look at biomes, okay, you can see inside of world generation, this should really be tabbed in because it's inside of that, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to mess the vanilla files up. So inside of the root node of world generation, you have weather. Okay, inside of weather, you have a property, and there's a lot of things are going to use the property tag. So in a property, you can have attributes, and the attribute again can be named anything, as long as the game program itself has to load these files in. So you can't just invent new attributes and expect the game to use them. You have to follow their name conventions. But inside of this is an attribute called a class. So if we go back to our original one, so this another node, we could have an attribute called priority equals, and then do like 1. Okay, and then we could have another node inside of here. Okay, and we could have this set to priority 2. And these are two separate nodes. Okay, so just like this, there's a lot of properties in here. These node names are properties, but they have different names. Okay, and by names I mean they have different attributes of name, and those are different, and they have different values. So once you understand that the system is actually really simple in terms of how to follow the path into an XML file, you just look at it like a directory. There's a root directory, there's directories inside, and they're all nodes. Okay, if I save this file, let's not save it in the vanilla files. How about? Let's not save it there. If I just save that as example.xml, Notepad++ will automatically then color everything, knowing that it's an XML file. It says, oh yeah, this is good. The other thing to note in an XML file are comments. Now, if we just want to say, if you want to, as a mod developer, as somebody wants to go in here, this is a single line comment. The single line comments are just 2 slashes, or at least they should be. We don't really have a whole lot of single line comments in here, but every multi-line comment let's take that out. For some reason, it didn't accept that. There's your syntax for a comment. This bracket, which is the less than sign, an exclamation point, and 2 dashes. That starts the comment. The dashes and then the greater than sign ends the comment. And this is a multi-line comment. And the multi-line comment, you can put this anywhere. This end of comment. Okay, so a multi-line comment, anything that's loading XML will completely ignore the multi-line comment. It just, any comment, it just ignores it. It doesn't even, it has no basis on the file itself. So that's your syntax for your comments. From there, we can now dive into, let's take, well, yeah, we're just gonna take this all away here, and we're gonna look at biomes. So the first file that I want to cover, again, I'm not going to cover all of them because not all of them are really relevant, and some of them are really beyond the scope of something that I want to cover. So the first one that we want to cover is the Biomes XML. So the Biomes XML dictates not only random gen but pre-generated worlds, what happens in the biomes, like what goes on, what kind of weather to expect, all of that kind of stuff, including sub-biomes within a biome. So this is the first major file that a lot of people want to mod in general. So we're going to kind of go past this. So world generation is your root node. So we know that world generation starts everything off. Inside of there, we have our first block of things that we could edit, and that's the weather. Now, these values, not really anything that we need to worry about. Foggy and rainy, I mean, there's not a whole lot of data here, so let's move on. So these are biomes. These are indicating the biome numbers, and here are your main biomes: snow, pine forest, desert, radiated wasteland, city, and city wasteland. So cities can have their own little biome, their own coloring of the sky, and some of their own weather. Okay, so this is just your general biome indicator. This just sets up the IDs, sets up the names. Beyond that, as you can see, biomes, each one of those is a biome map, and then here we have biome. Now, a lot of times their naming convention, their nodes that end in an S usually contain a lot of tags that start without the S. So biomes is going to have a lot of biome in it. So this one's going to be name equals snow, and we already indicated that up here. So we're setting up what the names are. Now we're gonna separate them even further. So inside of biome, name equals snow. This is an attribute. There's another attribute, topsoil block, which is the terrain snow, and I'll cover the how everything ties together here in a little bit. So topsoil block is the snow. Biome map color, that is basically, I believe that is when you look at your mini map, what color is shown on that specific biome, and that's how the mini map generates its different colors. Okay, now inside of biome we have weather, and this dictates all of the weather in the snow biome, and you've got to be very, very careful editing anything in here, because I have run into major problems when editing stuff in here. It's really guerrilla math, because you have multiple tags setting up the system. So this first one, fog here, is saying no fog, min 0, max 0, probability 0.9. So that's a 90% chance that there will be no fog. And then we have absolute fog, 100 and 100, and that's a probability of 0.1. That's 10% chance. In my experience, these need to add up. Their probabilities need to add up to 1. Okay, if they don't, really bad things start to happen. Unfortunately, they don't always follow this, because you can see down here in precipitation, these do not add up. These do not add up to 1. These add up to 1, but these do not. And then the wind does. So it's really weird. The weather, the specific weather in here. And then the particle effect tag, which this indenting is all wrong. If you want to really figure out the indenting, that's how it should look right there. And then this just kind of indicates that the particle effect is going to be a snowstorm. All right. So this replaces tall grass with snowy grass. Okay, subbiomes again. So there's a 10% chance that this subbiome will generate, and this subbiome indicates all of these things, and we're going to cover this here. It's really backwards. It's so hard to read some of these sometimes. The main ones are that I've gone in and edited are any sort of gravel that appears in here. So here's a terra gravel. This should really be down here if we're gonna keep with the system here. That's how that should look, and it doesn't. So it can be confusing. But you basically start at the top. That's why you have depth. So the depth of one, the first block, when you go down, should be snow. Then you go, that's going to be basically 2 blocks deep, and then you have dirt. And then everything else should be stone. Now inside of this block, this indicates there are different resources that can generate inside of there other than stone. So this depth is going to say, oh, instead of stone, I want iron at a probability of 0.65 and RNG generation type. It's just random world gen. I don't know if they plan on having like modifiers on random world gen. Like I would imagine something like this being used for like a rich resource modifier on random world gen. So if you select a rich resource, then you could specify inside of this file different probabilities for different things. But I don't think they implemented that at all. All right, so you have the probabilities inside of this file do not need to go to 1, or this segment. So as you can see, if you add up all these probabilities, definitely not going to add up to 1. But this indicates the distribution of all of those. All right, so everything else in here is basically the same thing. You have different layers. Again, you have depth. So this replaces the snow with stone, with possibly replacing it with gravel. And it's a mess. It's a quagmire of things. And once you get past the subbiome, then there are decorations. Those are the things on the surface that you can see. Rocks, bird nests, blueberries, and all of the things that can sprinkle on the surface with very low probabilities. So that's the subbiome. That's not the entire biome. That is just the subbiome. And, you know, again, here's another subbiome. I don't know why they have those in here. Another subbiome. So here's a lead ore subbiome, slightly higher probability. Coal ore, again. And then potassium nitrate, a really good amount. And that just indicates there's potassium nitrate with a very high probability. And then we come down to the main layers. Now we're past all of the subbiomes. The main layers indicates in general the entire biome. And so we come through here and the same thing. We have layer 1 is snow, dirt, all that kind of stuff. And then the decorations, this is where you get the main decorations for the entire process, the entire biome itself. You even have prefabs in here. This is those big rock formations on the surface. That's what these are. They're actually prefabs, just like a house or the hospital. They're prefabs and they're just big rocks. Okay, now moving into, let's open up one of my mods. I have those under programming, 7 days, alpha 18, 7 days mod, config, biomes. All right, so here is where modding comes into play. We're going to cover some basic stuff here. So this right here, I try to comment everything. Add taters to the pine forest biome only. So if we go to biomes, right here is the pine forest. So let's follow the XPath. We know world generation is the root node. Okay, we know that. The next node is biomes with an S. And the next one is biome without an S. Right there, biome without an S. And I want to filter. This has an attribute called name. So the @ sign is the attribute. Attribute name of pine forest. And there it is. So this XPath gets me into there. And then I want to go into decorations. And so I skip weather. I skip the subbiomes, all of the subbiomes. I skip the layers and I go right into decorations. There's a lot of decorations in this biome. Okay. And this is an append. So what this does is it goes into this node, decorations, and it just tacks this line onto the bottom down here. So it'll come in here, see this decorations, and at the very bottom it'll add another line, which is my tag right here. And that adds a very low probability chance that a potato plant can be found in the pine forest. Very, very simple system. And I need to cover quickly this tag ender right here. So if we go back to our example, any root name / any root name. Okay, this is going to be a block node. So this is a block of data. You can have a single line here. Let's just say name equals example. And then a slash tag like that ends it. That is the exact same of doing this. Okay, these are basically, except for example 2, obviously, the end tag here and the way that ends it here are basically the same thing. It's just a shorthanded version of doing that. So if you don't need any data in here, if you don't need any of that, you can end it just like this, and that covers that XML little trick. So if we go back into here, you can see I end it the same way they're ended here. It's the same. I just basically copied one of these, took the block name, and we'll get into block, and we'll get into that cross compatibility in a second. This line is a set, and a set doesn't add code. It doesn't add any new data. It goes and overrides a value that's already here. That's what a set does. And you can set any data that you see in here, you can override and set it to something else. So let's follow the XPath. World generation, we know that's the root node. Biomes, that's where all of these biomes are set, and then the biome with the name equals burnt forest. So let's go past that. There's all the decorations. There's water, only water, underwater, and then wasteland. Okay, burnt forest has got to be in here somewhere. There's the burnt forest. Okay, so we're in the burnt forest. We need to go down to the decorations. Dun, 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 dun. Decorations. Okay. So we're in the decorations block now. /decoration, which means we want a specific decoration in here. A very specific decoration. And how we choose that is using the attribute block name, which they all, or almost all of them, have block name. And it searches for CNT bird nest. So there's the CNT bird nest way over there. Okay. Then I do a slash and at prob, and that gets me this tag right there, probability. That's saying I want this specific value right there. I want to override that, and I want to override it to 0.005 instead of 0.001. And that overrides the probability and makes bird nests more abundant in the burnt forest. And that's just a little example of how that works. You go in, you use Xpath, and Xpath is basically just a search path. You're going deeper and deeper in the tree as you go along. And then I added in my mod a few commented outlines. So optional, remove landmines from wasteland. So this removes tags. Remove will just take that out completely. And so this goes in world generation, biomes, the regular biome, where the name is the wasteland, in the decorations thing, or the decorations block, the specific decoration, and I want to remove where the block name equals mine candy tin. Then I will do the same thing for mine hubcap, and then the hubcap no mine. So these three lines remove all mines, or these three lines remove all mines from the wasteland biome. And they're commented out because, it adds a little bit of flair. But I put those in there because a lot of people like to remove them. And anybody who wants to use my mod can just delete these lines. So this line and this line, and load up the game, and there you won't have any more mines generated. Now, if you've already walked through the wasteland where these things generated, adding these will not remove them from already generated land. So, you need a new world, or you need to go into a new area that you haven't been before in order to see the change. Okay, so that's basically the Biomes XML. It's just that content repeated over and over and over again. So you could come through here and say, oh, I want these, resources to always be there. Now, let's get into a more advanced way of changing values in a mod. Okay, because you don't need to specify every block or every little thing. You can change all of the same tags all at once in an entire file with a really easy way. So we're gonna rumble on up here to near the top. Sorry for all the scrolling text, but let's get back up to the snow biome here. So right up to the top of the thing. Now let's say we want to make one of these, just for an example, I want diamonds to be like way more abundant. Way more abundant. But I don't want to have to go through and search every sub-biome, every layer, like everything. I don't want to go through and change each one of these individually. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to add a little bit to this. I'm not going to keep this line. I will comment it out eventually, but let's put a little comment in here. Max diamonds. Okay, that just tells me what this is. So we want to set XPath equals. Now we know world generation, biomes, biome. We know that's a given. We're going to be in biomes. Now, every one of these, so that gets us into biome. If we don't leave a name for this, it applies to all of them. I mean, all of them. So we're going to go through here and say, from here, we want to do sub-biome. Sub-biome. Because there's a lot of sub-biomes. This right here, sub-biome. We don't even care about the probabilities. We don't even care about that. We want all of this generation to be maximized. Okay, so the layers is the next one. Now we want a specific layer. We don't really want a specific one. We just want to get into that one. Okay. So now it's going to look at all layers. And inside of all layers, or all layer tags, layer blocks, we want to get into the resources. Now, the resources is where we really need to be specific, because we don't want all resources to be overridden. We just want Terra or Diamond. And that is a block name. So the brackets here, name equals, and then Terra or Diamond. So that goes through and finds Terra or Diamond in this chain. Now, we want to override the probability. So we're going to do a / probability. And we're going to set that to 0.2. Set. There we go. This line will go through every sub-biome in every biome and set the layer of resources of Terra or Diamond to a 0.2, basically 20% chance. So you're taking it from a 0.1% chance, or 0.01% chance, and making it a 20% chance. So it radically increases the amount that you're going to be dealing with. Now, I don't really want to keep this in here, but that will go through every single biome. Now, the one thing you need to also make sure, because we're not just in sub-biomes, we need to also specify the layers without a sub-biome. So we can copy this, paste it, and just remove the sub-biome. And that will go through every biome and ignore the sub-biomes and just go through the layers, which also have diamonds in them. Everything else is the same. Layers, layer, resources, Terra or Diamond, and it just takes from the sub-biome and it just makes it apply to everything. So with two lines of code, you can edit the entire distribution of resources inside of a biome, inside of the game itself. So huge power can be done with XPath. If you don't specify something specific, it will apply to all of them, which is handy if something doesn't have a specific name, and we can get into that later. So I'm gonna comment this out. Come on, and then end it down here. Okay, so this isn't commented out, even though it still looks like it. We're gonna save that. Okay, moving on to a different file altogether. I want this to be an in-depth, so I can reference, everybody over here and say, hey, we're gonna cover all of the things. So That was a 36-minute exploration of one file. I think that's pretty good. Okay, we're going to go through here. Okay, block placeholders. Not an overly important file. It basically is for if you do your own prefabs, there are loot helpers in that, and you can place those down, and it will just randomly pick one of these blocks for that loot helper. And it really only applies if you're making your own prefabs, because then you can just do loot helpers, and it'll generate one. But you can obviously add or modify these random loot helpers and make them. You could override the block name and make them all like crates of something. So there are things you can do. I haven't really seen very many people, or really anybody, change this up. You can add your own placeholders, but that you're dealing with then needing your own. You could add your own placeholders, but then you need to add your own object that references those placeholders, and it's a quagmire, and I really don't want to get into that. So we're gonna glance over that one. Blocks. This is one of the biggest files, if not one of the, I think it's the biggest file in the game. Every block in the game is in here, even air, believe it or not. So this is where that Terra gravel comes from that I referenced in the biomes. This is the block. Terra stone, they sort of went through a naming convention here. So terrain is what this Terra means. So Terra bedrock, Terra dirt, Terra forest ground, and all of these tags are blocks in the game. So all of the building blocks, all of the grass, the trees, any building block, any shape of building block, they're all in here. This file is enormous. Let's just zip to the end here. Yeah. 27,000 lines of blocks. So there's a lot of stuff in here. And let's pick apart some of these things. Okay, so we're going to really do some cross-checking of data in here. And I don't know what everything does. I just know, how do we, what most modders try to edit. Okay, moving in. We're going to start with something simple. Material M stone. What does this reference? Now, if we go to open, there is a materials XML right in here. There's a whole lot of help that you can read in here. I highly encourage you to read through the commented out help that's in here. Okay, so if we go through here and we do a search for M stone. No, Control F. There's M stone, which is a material. This material is where you get a lot of the behind the scenes data that you're building with. And if you have collapses, if you're building something and something isn't stable enough and it collapses, this is where this file comes in, because the M stone material has these indicators. So mass is, let's just call that the weight of the block. Stability glue is how much mass can hang off of any side of this block, okay, and not fall. So your stability glue says you can have stone, and you can have 12 blocks of stone hanging off an edge without it falling. Now, you can play around with these values all you want. There is a hard-coded limit to how many blocks can hang off of a side of another block. And I think it's 15. Pretty sure it's 15. So 15 blocks can hang off of a side regardless of the stability glue. You can't get any more than that. But you can make some material more stable than others by messing with the stability glue. So that takes care of the material. Other properties in here are very self-explanatory. No scrapping. You can't scrap stone. Why? What value would you scrap it to? Mesh and shape, those are all like when you have a single block of stone, it has that diamond shape. Yeah, that is where these come in. It's just terrain indicates that. Texture of one, that's indexing into a texture atlas that they have internally, and it's using that. Imposter exclude, I'm not sure what that does. Hardness scale is how hard that block is to mine. There are values in here that can do that as well. So it's kind of redundant. It's allows a little bit of extra nudging of values. Weight, I'm not sure what weight is all about. Map color, again, what color does this stuff look like on a mini map? Repair items. This is an important one. This indicates what items need to be reused to repair the block. And this applies to any block. Concrete, asphalt, dirt, like repair items. If this tag doesn't exist, it can't be repaired, at all. And then how many repair items? If this thing was just about dead, it would take 6 cobblestones in order to repair it. This value scales with how damaged it is. So it's, if it's down 1 hit point, it's not going to take 6 to repair. It'll use 1, and that'll repair it up. But the most it'll use is 6. And the game automatically scales it. Now, harvest is what you get when you hit this thing with a tool that has this tag on it. Okay? So, resource rock small, you get 55 when you have ore wood harvest. And ore wood harvest is a tag you'll come across a lot in the game, or in this file. There's also a butcher harvest tag for like organic, like harvesting deer and stuff like that. A destroy is just what you get when when you fully damage it and it disappears. In times past, you got resources when you destroyed something. So you'd harvest. When it broke, you would get a little bit, a little bit at the end. And they removed that. So destroy, you no longer get anything when you destroy something. You get the 55 and that's it. You could come in here and edit this with Xpath and, add an attribute called name, add an attribute called tag, and edit the count and get something at the end. Or you could just edit the count and, make up for it, and it's easy. Fall, okay. Fall is what happens if this thing falls to the ground. If this block becomes unstable and falls, and anybody who's played the game has seen blocks fall, this is what happens. You have a 23% chance to turn into rock smalls. Okay? 23% chance. That's what this probability is, to turn into 44 rock smalls, which is one of those little, your little pebbles on the ground, or a little resource that you can pick up, or a lot of ones like iron and stuff are the bag, the little sacks that you can pick up. That's what this calls for. There's a 10% chance that it'll turn into destroyed stone, which is another block. Okay, and that stick chance is what odds if stone falls, what are the odds that it's going to stick and turn into this block? That's what that means. Mobs can spawn on. That's pretty self-explanatory. Economic value. This indicates value at a trader. Okay, except it's false. Sellable to trader equals false. But these economic values and bundle sizes are still in here in case you want the trader to sell stone to you. And that's what this means. I don't think you can buy stone from a trader, but these values are in there in case you want to buy them. The bundle size indicates how many of this object is included in a trader's transaction. So you can set a bundle size to 50 and the economic value to 50. And so you go in and you buy one transaction. Just buying one object will give you 50 stone, and it will cost you 50, coins. Okay, so filter tag, sort order, these are not anything I want to worry about. Display type, block terrain, I don't need to worry about that. So let's get into other materials here. Let's just jump somewhere. There's some trees and how fast they grow. So you can see plant growing grows to a 6 meter. 6 meter plant growing to a 13 meter. 13 meter grows to a 19 meter. 19 meter grows to a 28, and so on. And then finally, each one of these has a harvest and a destroy. Okay. It looks like a destroy gives you 2 seeds. Tree planted, winter pine, 1 meter, 2. Yeah, it should give you 2 seeds. I'm not sure why that's a block name though. But anyway, the growth rate indicates how fast it's going to grow, all that kind of stuff. Fertile level checks the soil that it's planted in for the fertile level. And if we go to a farm, farming tip, no. Where is the farm block? There it is. Plot farm block. We want to look at this. So this is the new farming. If we look at material, it's M farmland. Well, we can reference that in our materials XML. M farmland has a fertile level of 16. Okay, so when you look at those trees and it says fertile level, it's checking this value. It's saying, oh, this value is 16, therefore I can go ahead and grow. Obviously, the stability glue, it's not going to hold a whole lot of weight. You're basically going to be able to put 2 of these in and no more. You just really not give you a whole lot with that. But we can go through here. Shape equals new. That's just sort of a catch-all. Model, that's the model that you see in the game. Texture, those are the different sides. So texture, if you see texture values in here, and there's 6 values because there's 6 sides to a block. 47, this one's obviously going to be the top, and these are all the other sides. Those are pretty much internally referenced values, but you can, if you add a block of your own, you could use these values on your block if you wanted. The imposter exchange, again, I'm not really sure what that does. Only simple rotations, which means you can't slap these to the side and have the planted surface, go to the side. This is only going to be upright, and it's only going to have the simple rotations on the ground. Mobs can spawn on, we covered that. Repair items, here's your repair, clay lump. Economic value, it's pretty good, 50 coins for an economic value. Harvest, you're going to get clay lumps, but this is a farm block that appears basically in random gen or in prefabs. The player version extends this block, and this extends tag basically copies the tags in what it references and uses those for this, and then you can define overrides for those. So you see a lot of extends, especially in items. Blocks, there's some extends on blocks, but items are going to use this in heavy amounts. So this overrides the harvest here, and it says, hey, Orewood harvest, I don't want anything. Okay. Potassium nitrate, I don't want any of it. But destroying it, that last step where it disappears from the world, give me the block back. Okay. So instead of dismantling it and getting resources back, you're actually going to get the block back this time. And so that's what those 3 lines do. I don't want any harvesting, but the destroy, I get the block back, which is, I mean, it's not bad. And then the fall, we've covered that. Everything else is really not any details. Pretty much everything else we covered. The last part I want to cover is an important one. Medic pile, the tag loot list in here is vital. Okay, loot list calls back to a different XML file called loot. If we go to loot, the root node is loot containers, loot probability templates. This is actually quite a lot. It kind of indicates your probabilities for getting like tier 3 stuff and the level, like what level are you, all sorts of interesting values. Okay, so loot quality templates also indicates the level, like as if you were looting something, quality 6. Okay, if your loot level is this high, you have a almost guaranteed probability of getting a level 6 something. Okay, let's get down to something easily monitored. Loot group. Okay. Where is it? We want loot. We're looking for ID numbers, basically. This is a huge file. There it is. Oh no, loot group. Where are my IDs? There they are. I knew they were in here. I just, man, brutal. Okay, so if we go to, let's close materials. Loot list, value 107. So if we go down to find the ID of the loot container, that's 107. And that's going to be a ways down. Oh, there we go. There it is. ID 107, medic loot pile. It should be basically what this is. Okay. And this is going to give you count. It's going to be 1 or 2. Size indicates the size. When you open it in the UI, what's the width and height of the amount of squares that you see? So there's going to be a 6 across and 2 down. A number of squares that's going to be in there, and your open and close sounds and your quality template harkens back to those big lists of templates up there. Destroy on close, this is why they explode when you're done looting them. You can change all these to false and they'll stay put. But the item group, medicine, okay, that references something else. The game is a nest of just nastiness. That goes up to these loot group names. Okay, so medicine is in here somewhere. No, not rare medicine. There's medicine. So there's your loot group medicine. So when you open that container, Okay, when you open this thing, the loot list is called. It goes in there and it says, was 1 to 2 items, and it basically does random numbers, and it says, okay, pick one of these if value is there, and there's a whole lot of probabilities involved, but it comes into this loot list and it says, oh, here's one. Do I need more? Oh yeah, there's count equals 2. So let's get another one, and comes in here and re-rolls and says, oh, I'll get this one too. So that directs what loot you get, and you can add your own custom loot containers. You can have your own custom loot groups. You can have a box reference your own loot group and your own loot container, where it's going to be full of just the most pristine, awesome stuff. That you can do that. So yeah, the loot containers give you probabilities of getting any one of these, either a group of things, lab equipment or dyes, or actually specific things. And so you can see item group equals or item name equals. Name is that specific thing. So it comes in here and says, oh, I need 2 of these. So it rolls and says, oh, I'm going to grab this one. And it comes in here and it says, oh, there's a 5 to 12. So then it rolls again, finds a number in between in between these values, and it says, oh, probability of 0.5. Let's roll it again. So whenever you open a container, there's a ton of math going on in the background to actually dictate what you get and when you get it. So you're really at the mercy of the random number generator at all times. It's crazy how these probabilities can stack. I've tweaked it myself to basically fill up inventories within two searches of untouched things. Like you open them up and there's 20 things in the container, and it's just like overwhelming. So I tend not to touch too much of this at the time. But my mod adds like a quick axe and a diamond axe. I could come in here and do a search for tools. Let's find an actual loot group. Not schematics. Common, not books, not rare. Tool parts. Rare tools. So I could create an Xpath. It comes in here and it indicates I want to append onto rare tools, and I want to add my diamond axe or my quick axe. And you just append another item, and therefore in the game you have a chance, not guaranteed, but you have a chance of finding one of those in rare tools or working stiffs. So there's a whole lot of stuff in here, and we're already well into this file, and this is just the blocks file. But I'm trying to ease into how all of these files relate to one another. So that's the gist of that. Any questions? How can you change textures of a new ore we just made from the default stone? That's a good question. It involves trying to figure out how their texture system works, because their textures, their references in this file are internal textures, an internal texture atlas. So the short answer is I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible. You could try to have a PNG file in your mod, and then the value of the texture is that PNG file, likely without the .png on it. So you can play around with this texture tag and see if you can put different values in there. The other option is if you know of a mod that does it, go through their code and figure out how they did it. Just look at the texture tag, see what they used and where that file is, and just mimic that. I am not saying I know everything, but the number one thing that I learned over the last 20 years of modding games is learn by example. Don't be afraid to download a mod and dig through its code to eke out a little information on how something was done. It is by far the best way of learning how to mod is by example, which is why I always try to put my mods out there and put the code out there and all of the modding tutorials that I've done, including this stream, because everybody learns differently. Everybody has their own way of seeing things. And for me, at least, if I'm stuck on something, I don't necessarily want somebody to give me the answer because I will likely not remember what that answer is later down the road. So I always have tried to seek out answers in example. So if you know of a mod that does it, I would highly recommend just opening it up and being like, how did they override the texture? It could be absolutely as simple as a PNG file with the texture value of a name instead of a number. Very easy. How do we make skills value 0? We'll get into skills in a second. I'm really trying to segregate this stream into individual files. So blocks, I've covered pretty much all of the blocks here, or all of the tags in a block, and how they cross-reference one another. So you could, going back to biomes, you could go through and make the biome like the Terra Destroyed Stone. Okay, this is the surface block of the wasteland. You could easily go through either a sub-biome or the main biome and make the entire surface iron. You could easily do that. So, play around with the values, play around with how everything works. It's Terra or iron. You could make the entire surface. You could make the entire biome iron if you wanted to. You could go through a sub-biome. Let's say a sub-biome of the burned forest. You could make coal. Like the entire block, like thousands of blocks, you could make a giant coal vein like that. The options are really unlimited. Okay, let's move on. Take a drink here. All right, we are about an hour in. Okay, moving on to buffs. We're gonna skip the blocks conversion. That's just old prefabs, how to convert them up. Buffs. This giant file, when you get infected, when you are hot or cold or freezing or you're bleeding, okay, those are all buffs. And this file directs how those buffs behave, how long they last, all of that stuff is in the buffs file. And the XML is the same. Your root node is buffs, and then you have a bunch of buff commands or blocks in there. And you just go through this list. Buff God, yeah, that's maxed out. But these are all, those are all like tests, I'm guessing. Let's find one that's actually, that does something. Weather, survival, hot. What are these? What is the block that these are all in? Effect group, buff, status, check. Update rate. So this must, a lot of these are called internally, so you don't know when they're triggered. The status checks, these must be called by the game, and their effects are just in here, because this looks like it's where the temperature, core temp, and all that kind of stuff is in here. CVAR. CVARs are internal variables that items and buffs can alter. So there, you could have a custom CVAR. You could indicate one of those for clothing that you have on, and then you have a buff on top of that, where the CVAR, you have an operation on that, and you say, oh, if the CVAR exists, then apply this buff. The GTLT, that's greater than, less than. So how to read this is on self buff update. So that's basically the game is probably calling on self buff update, once every, few seconds, or maybe a couple times a second or something like that. The requirement not has buff God. So if you're not in debug mode and you don't have God selected, that's why that not has buff. If you don't have the God buff, then come through here. CVAR compare core temp. This is looking at a CVAR, which is your core temperature, which is the temperature that your body reports it being at when you look at your status on the UI. So if your core temp is greater than 10 and your core temp is less than 30, okay, that's going to add a buff, element hot. And then this file is just kind of brutal, but here's the code, minus 30 and 10. And then remove buff if greater than or equal to. So if you go above minus 10 on your core temp, of greater than or equal to, it's going to remove the buff. So this adds the buff. These remove the buff. On self buff update. So there's a lot of stuff in here to unpack. A lot of it is self-explanatory. I mean, it's just the buff encumbered. You can go through here, and remember, you can edit a lot of these. This is a huge file. But you can see, untreated, here's your buff infection. There's your display value. There's your remove buffs. Like what? It's a complicated file, and it's really only for really advanced modders. If you practice, if you really dig in, and if you spend the time, you can unpack this file and figure out, buffs that you may want to add and buffs you may want to mod and stuff like that. But I would recommend trying your hand at a blocks or an items modifier before you get into buffs, because this is a heavy file. Okay, so we're gonna kind of skim over that, and we're gonna go to the next one. Dialogues we're gonna skip. Entity classes. Entity classes is where all the zombies and creatures and even the player are defined. It's a very important file. So player male and player female are all in here. Oh, look at all these. There's player female, which extends the player male, and then just overrides some of those. So the player male is really where all the values are set. So there's a lot of stuff in here. A lot of it is self-explanatory. So the class entity player probably references something internal, an internal class programmed by the developers. I could open up their file and decompile it and see if that's true, but that's what I'm thinking is true. So you have a mass. So if you're walking over blocks, This is the mass that you're adding to it, which is why sometimes you don't get a collapse until somebody walks over the top of it, because you're 180 mass walking over the top of something. Okay, so physics bodies. A lot of these are referencing internal values, so changing them probably would not be wise. Okay, time stay after death is your body, not your backpack, your body. How long your body sticks around. It's interesting that they have two weights. Don't they have a weight up here? Oh no, they have a mass. Weight. I'm not sure how those are different. So here's all the sounds. These are all the sound effects of, you know, when you get hurt or when you're drowning, or all of the different sound effects. Pretty much everything in here is relatively self-explanatory. Leg explosion damage multiplier. So these are multipliers on damage. Game mode survival. These are items on enter game. These indicate the items that you're given when you enter a game for the first time. So you can edit these. So like survival mode, and then drink jar boiled water. This is multiplayer. So canned chili, first aid bandage, torch, and a keystone. So when you first enter a game, these are the things that are given to you. Now you can come in here and set these values to anything. You could say, I want a quick axe, I want 10 meat stews, and I want, you know, whatever, a bunch of health packs, and just go completely overpowered. Or you could add guns in here. You could add ammo in here. It really sky's the limit. Experience gain. That's how much you gain for killing the player. So if you're playing on a server that is PvP, that's the experience you get. And then buffs. These are the buff status. You can see there's your buff status check, 1 and 2. So those are the buffs that you're automatically put on your character and are constantly running. So they're just constantly running and giving you a status check. And your hand item indicates that melee hand player. This basically is why bears hit with this much damage, why zombies hit with this much damage. They have different hands. So your hand item is your hands, which is an item. It's literally an item in items.xml, melee hand player, which directs how much damage you can do to blocks and entities and all that kind of stuff. So here's your effect group: health max, stamina max, water max. You can change these values if you want. Health change OT. OT is over time. So all of these values can be set and adjusted based on perks, based on objects, based on buffs that you have. They can all be edited. So harvest count, base set 1, harvest count. So your harvest count here, this butcher harvest, if you use no tools at all to pound on, a deer, you're going to get half the resources that you would get normally if you actually used a tool. But the tool has to have the butcher harvest tag. It has to have it. So you can see your hands, all harvest, Orwood harvest, crop harvest, wild crops harvest. Those tags are all associated with your hands. Okay, so you have here base set 0, waste treasures, acid harvest. So if you just use your hands, you're not gonna get a whole lot. Okay, so moving on. Walk speed, run speed. I actually edit these with the Letterman jacket. Here, I can open that really quick. Let's see. Programming. No, not that one. No, I want to open this, then open. We're in entity classes. So here is my no, that was the wrong one. Items. Dun, 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 dun. So my items, if we go through, there's a lot of changes in here. The link to the mod is in the description, by the way. Let's go through. There it is. So the items, apparel code letter jacket, effect group, passive effect, run speed, and walk speed. Here's one down here called walk speed that I add because it's not a part of the main one. Okay, the run speed and walk speed affect this value, walk speed and run speed. So I'm overriding the walk and run speed with that object. I'm not changing it permanently because you can take the jacket off and things will go back down to normal. I'm just overriding it. So you could have an object that makes you, when you're crouched, you could make it let's say roller skates. Let's say you add roller skates to the game and you want to make it so crouching speed is really, really high. So you'd say, you would override in the item, you would have an effect group, you would have a passive effect, and the name in that item would be crouch speed, base set, or you could have base add or percent add. There's a lot of ways that you can do it, but you can override the crouch speed if you're wearing the roller skates. That's just one example. Okay, so all of these other ones, CVARs, stamina change, all of those are pretty self-explanatory. So your stamina change over time is going to be using 1.5 times stamina while you're running. A lot of these are, CVAR for crouching. So this one here is if you have the great heist sprint sneak perk and your crouching equals 1, then you're going to be basically running 1.5 times faster. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Spread, change, multiply. These are all base values that then later get addressed. So entity classes, moving on to zombies. Zombie template male kind of is a catch-all for a lot of the other zombies. So a lot of zombies are based on this guy. So yes, tags, entity zombie walker. This property does not inherit on extends. Okay, so tags doesn't apply if you extend to the using this value here. So mass and want, so pretty standard stuff, almost the same as a player. A lot of the same properties. Walk type indicates how they move around. So you have your regular walk, then you have the really twitchy, walk. You have the skater guy walk where there's head bobbing back and forth. You have several different walk types. And then you have obviously the crawl type as well, the guy who crawls on his stomach. Moving speed, these are pretty good. So zombie white feral, he extends Tommy's zombie template, so he's extending and then he's overriding it with all these other ones. So you can go through, I would recommend going through and just seeing all these and getting really comfortable with all of these. Because, here's the zombie white, his hands, he is the same as the zombie cop. So you could come in here and make his hand something else. You could apply your own hand. You can create your own hand in items and then give that hand to a zombie and make him do maybe he's got an uber digging hand so he can punch through concrete really, really easily. So that specific zombie will use that specific hand and just drill through and drill through walls. The other big one is experience gain, loot drop probability, and loot drop entity class. Entity loot container is defined in that loot. Well, the loot that he has is defined. But experience gain is how much XP you get for killing him. Loot drop probability, how probable is him dropping a backpack when he dies? Okay, so he has a 3% chance of dropping a backpack. Not very high. Okay, so health max. These are scales. So that's why there's a base effects, because their health can scale with difficulty and that kind of stuff. And so the game might override some of these. So there's a zombie white irradiated. So these are the overrides for him, and so on and so forth. It's really standard. And again, coming in here and editing something is really not hard, because root class, entity classes, entity class, these override backpacks. So these are entity loot containers. What I do is I make them stick around longer. So when they drop backpacks, normally they don't stick around for very long. And so what I do is I override those and make them stay around a lot longer. So you can get through an entire blood moon and not have to run out and gather the backpacks before they disappear. This next set overrides a few XP values. Really overriding an XP value. Chickens, I found some of the hardest things to find and kill, and so they get a lot of XP. It's just one of the Easter eggs that I have in my mod. I have many Easter eggs, but this is just one of them. Kill some chickens. Okay. That takes our entity. I mean, the entity classes are really not that bad. All of the. Let's see if I can find them. All the animals are in here too, not just the zombies. There's your loot containers. There's your backpack. So poof after this many seconds, 3,600 seconds. That is what? 10 minutes? No. 60. That's 5 minutes. 3,600 seconds, I believe. Yeah. So I make that. I double that value. There's all your vehicles. All right. There's animals. So here's a boar. Boar is going to have harvest values in here. Okay. The harvest tags are going to be, their tool categories are going to be butcher. You have to have the tool. And you have to have butcher harvest. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, if you're not using the right tool for the job, you're not gonna get very much out of it. Okay, so this tells you how much meat. So if you're butcher harvest, you're gonna get 30 meat out of a boar if you're using the right tool. Leather, again, 7 leather, 4 animal fat, and 15 bone if you're using the right tool, or 5 bone if you're not. All tools. Moving on from there, Grace, that's that giant pig, so she should give you more meat. Yeah, 100 meat. If you're able to find her. So all the animals are in here as well. Animal snake. There's the zombie dog. Oh Lord. Yeah. So you can come in here and buff all of the all of the rotting flesh that they give, or all of the meat. You can come in here and just filter, similar to how we filtered on Biomes. You could just say all the resource bone. I just want to increase all of it. Pretty straightforward. Okay, moving on. Entity groups. I'm gonna write that out. I've been keeping track of about how long it's taking me to go through all of these. So entity groups. This is where the groups of zombies are defined. That includes wandering hordes. That includes zombies that appear in a POI. And it just includes generic groups of zombies based on, say, which biome you're in. So you can add, the snow zombie to other biomes if you wanted to. You could add all the other zombies to the snow biome if you wanted to. So this is defining entity groups. I have in the past defined my own entity groups and my own wandering hordes, and this is how it's done. So this file is basically just entity groups, entity group with a bunch of different entities in it, and these names, zombie names, are you find these in the file we just had open, the entity classes. That's where these names come from. Okay, so let's see. Snow zombies. You got entity group snow zombies, and then you have different game stage values of said snow zombies. I don't know why they did this, but it is what it is. They do add feral snow zombies in here with different probabilities, but they use these other values in other places. We'll get to that in a second. So zombies cave. Well, when you go into a cave, these are the possible things that can spawn in there. 10% probability there's a bear. Okay, 10% probability there's a white in there. These values, these probabilities do not have to add up to 1. But they're just the raw probability of any given zombie appearing in there. Because anything that references this can reference a count as well. So Zombies Cave, if you're creating a POI and you say the entity group is Zombies Cave, you can say I want 10. So it's going to go through here and select 10 instances out of here at these probabilities. The probability, I just don't want to get into probabilities. The game is just a quagmire of probabilities. So here you have your animals. These are the desert animals. These are the enemy desert animals. This is what indicates where all the zombie vultures. So you could go through this file and remove every instance of a zombie vulture, and the vultures would no longer spawn. The only override to that is on POIs where there are sleeper zombies. You know, when you go up to a roof and there's a vulture perched somewhere that hasn't seen you yet, those wouldn't change because those are hard coded into the prefab. But just this random generation of zombies wouldn't include those anymore. Okay, so this file is from there. It's just more and more and more of the same. And then you have entity groups. Let's see. These are game stage entity groups again. We won't need to worry about that. Zombie bears group. That's the zombie bears. So you can come through here and add. Maybe you want to add dogs to the zombie bear group. If you wanted to. Wandering horde groups. So these are copied from scout groups. So these are the wandering hordes game stages that you see in here. A lot of these are auto-generated. Scout groups. There's sleeper horde. These are used in POIs when you go into them. These different game staged sleeper groups. Okay. Going on and on and on. Badass horde. Scout horde. Scout horde. These, when a screamer screams, okay, that is what this is. Scout horde group. Scout hordes. So depending on your game stage, whoever sees screams that's how it picks with zombies. And there's a lot of entries in here. Okay, really hard to read. So if you want, you could sit and copy one of these. Let's go into the late game stages. Okay, we can go to, let's go to our empty one here. And we could pick out what entities are spawned. If it's easier to read this way, you can kind of pick one out and say what kind of zombies are in here. Point. There we go. So if a screamer screams and your game stage is this high, you're going to get a lot of zombies. Probabilities over 1, you're guaranteed to get one of those. Pretty much guaranteed. It would be very hard not to get pretty much all of these zombies. But you can see radiated, ferals, like as you go higher in the tree, you're going to get more and more really, really awful screamer screaming scout hordes. Feral hordes, auto-generated, and blood mood hordes. So basically, this is where all of the entity groups are defined. Where they are used is in game stages, the very next version of this. So this is going to be 132. Game stages is the big one, because this the entity groups just groups them together. Who goes where, who gets spawned in with who, that's your entity groups. Game stages is where you define how they're used. So game stages is your root node, and then you have a bunch of baseline configs. Your difficulty, scavenger, adventurer, nomad. So this is 0 through what, 5? 0 through 5 difficulties. Just like on the top, what your difficulty is going to be set at. Okay, so wandering hordes, spawner, wandering hordes. When you get a wandering horde, this is where it comes from, and it's a 50. It's up to 50, but it's when your game stage is calculated, okay, it'll wrap around this however many times it has to land on one. So if you have a 1010 game stage, you're going to get this. You're going to get this one. Okay, it's going to wrap this thing around to whatever game stage that you have, up to 50, and it's just so if you want to come in here, and I have had mods in the past where I define my own groups, I define my own probabilities, and then I come in here and override a lot of these values. So make them tougher or make them easier, change it up a little bit, because they're, especially in Alpha 18, the wandering hordes are horrible. They're just horrible. So you can come in here and just, filter on game stage. Say, I want game stage 7 to be zombie bears. I want game stage 20 to be zombie cops. Like, you can come through here and reference your entity groups in here, and bingo, you've overridden a bunch of those. Beyond that, here is where you get spawners, and the spawners are what pre-gen POIs point to. I didn't really mean for that to be alliterative, but what they point to, when you walk into a POI and you see a bunch of zombies spawn in, this is what controls that. So the name Biker Bar Horde is referencing groups that we saw in entity groups. So depending on your game stage, if your game stage is 800 or over, it's going to spawn this group inside of there at all of the different spots. Okay. So yeah, there's each spawner, each sleeper spawner references this. Not the entire POI. Each spawner references it. So if you have a high enough game stage, that's why this max alive equals 1. Okay? When you turn a corner and the zombie spawns in, that's where this comes from. The spawner went through here, referenced it, picked out your game stage, and spawned in the zombie that was referenced in this group according to the probabilities. So, here's all of your different main POIs: biker bar, football stadium, ghost town, hospital, labs, soldiers, hazmats, utility workers, snow zombies. So this is where your snow zombies come from. Like all of the different POIs all reference this. Okay. So here's your sleeper volumes. These are your generic volumes. And then further down, scout, here's another spawn group for scouting, which references the groups. Okay, so these are all your different game stages, and these are all your different game stages of scout hordes. And a lot of these are auto-generated, right? So you don't really need to worry about editing these because they would just get overwritten anyway. And then you come up to the main one, Blood Moon Horde. This indicates what zombies, how many zombies, and how awful they are, how many waves that you get on blood moons. And a lot of these are auto-generated. So, take that with a grain of salt. You can go through, you can edit these. Absolutely, positively edit these. And so these, each spawn group is a wave. So when you're in the advanced hordes and you're fighting zombies, right? I'm fighting them coming from the east. And suddenly they stop coming from the east, and maybe they come from the north. And suddenly you're fighting zombies coming out of the north. Okay, that means this spawner group finished and it went on to the next one. So now we're into this spawner group. Once you finish that one, there can be a third spawner group. And I think there's no more than 3 waves of zombies. So once your third wave is done, the horde is ending. You could add another spawn group to all of these and have a trickle. Okay, max alive. You could have a trickle. Max alive equals 1, and you just have 1 zombie coming in at a time. I'm not really a fan of that, so I don't mind that they've gotten rid of it. But that's what you would do. Spawn group. You would add another spawn group onto the game stage here. So each game stage tag, you would just append a spawn group, and it would append it before this ending bracket here, and you just have max alive equals 1. You would have whatever spawn group it was, whatever entity group you wanted to reference. You could have all of them be cops if you wanted to, or bears. You could have zombie bears for the rest of the night if you wanted to. If you really wanted to have everybody die, but that could be a way to do it. You just number is very high number. These numbers are huge. 500. There's no way you're gonna kill that many zombies in one night. You're gonna have 3. Yeah, you're gonna have 1. That's 500. You're gonna have 1,500 zombies at this final game stage. You're gonna have 1,500 zombies coming at you. Not all at once, of course. That's dictated by the server settings. But 1,500 total zombies coming at you in one horde night, that would be hard to kill all of those. That would be really hard. Okay, so that is where horde nights are coming from. Okay, we're going to move on. Okay, let's see. Let me lower the sound of a generator in XMLs. Yes, we will get to that, definitely. Item modifiers. I'm just kind of going in alphabetical order. And I hope the people that ask stick around. I'm aware that, it's a little much to stick around, but I'm hoping you stick around. All right, item modifiers. These are mods to guns and apparel. So your silencers, your barrel extender, all of those are in here, as well as all the different color dyes. And it's pretty self-explanatory, actually. Very, very self-explanatory on what all this does. Let's see, running a launcher. Each of these item property overrides, laser sight, is individualized to the gun. So the laser sight on the M60 does this to the gun itself. So it changes the gun a little bit, but it is, if we go to the effect group, this effect group is what it actually does. Okay, that's what it does. So weapon handling, it adds, basically 20% to the weapon handling, and you can go through here. I would recommend going through here if you want to edit something, if you want to add your own, absolutely go through here. Let's see. Moving on. I think items is probably next. This file is enormous. 18,442 lines. Granted, there's a bunch that are disabled because they haven't gotten them to work yet. But anyway, items is your main. This is your main thing, right? Yeah, we could either this is the file that you could use. Actually, generator is in blocks. Let's go back to blocks. I want to answer your question. Unlocked by. Let's figure out what the block name is. Generator bank. Okay. Let me just go through here and look. Max power, slot item group, pair items. For some reason, I'm not seeing a any reference to audio in here. Stability, support, shape, mesh, math, model. Slide item, slot, small engine. These are harvest and destroy. Interesting that there's no audio reference in the generator bank. We'll look at sounds in a second. I just wanted to double check the blocks and make sure I wasn't going to miss it in blocks. So it's not referenced in blocks. So it must be referenced in sounds. Because part of my mod, I removed the running sound from blade traps. But blade traps have a line in here for audio. So, and I basically removed the line and then re-add it with an empty value to remove the audio. But there's no audio reference in blocks. So we're going to move on to items really quick. This file and these items, it would take me hours to go through the items XML. There is so much information in here that I don't know. I would rather answer specific questions about items in here than try to cover everything, because there's so much. There's so much in here. So the different tools have different damages, and let's just cover the basics. Okay, let's cover tools. Tags is important. Tags reference either what the tool is and how to use it, and perks associated with modifying what it can do and how effective it is. So let's go to an example. Instead of a stone axe, which is really generic. So a claw hammer is a melee weapon. It's light. It's a tool, but it also is modified by the attribute of strength, the perk Miner 69er, the perk of Motherload, and have cosmetic. I think cosmetic basically means you can dye it. You can apply a dye to this object. Without that, there would be no dye slot. So the tags reference back to like perks. If you add a custom perk, let's say you add a custom perk to increase crafting time, or not necessarily, well, yeah, to speed up crafting time of a machine, you would need to add the tag that you're applying it to the machine. It's like a forge. Let's say you're doing like forge crafting. You would need to then cross-reference and make sure everything is talking to one another. Okay, so repair kit. There's your repair tools. This you could add your own. Let's say you add an enhanced repair kit made with steel and oil and stuff like that. That's where you would override that. You would say, property at name equals repair tools / add value, and then you would have enhanced repair kit, a custom object in your Xpath. Okay, so you have a lot of things in the game now are unlocked two ways. Either a perk unlocks them or a schematic unlocks them, and that's what this unlocked by is. Either a perk or a schematic. Show quality just shows the quality bar at the bottom. Fuel value, what is this? If you put this in a forge, what's your fuel value going to be? Economic value is related to the trader. Action 0 and Action 1, those are how you use them. Okay. Action 0 is your just main action. What are you doing in this? This is basically swinging the hammer to pop somebody in the head. Action 1 is your right click. So your right click action is repairing. And class references internal things dealing with how to apply these properties to the class. So those are internal things. You can't add your own class of tool because you'd need to be able to code and program and insert that code into the main game. So class is really out. You can't really do anything with that. Repair amount tells you how much it's going to repair per hit, and everything else is pretty much straightforward. And your effect group, melee tool, claw hammer, they've really got out of their way of making that pretty standard, where the name of the effect group is the name of the object that it's in. To separate them. So if you inherit something, it's not going to inherit the effect group because you want the effect group to be the same name as the object. So the effect group is entity damage, block damage. Attacks per minute indicates how fast you swing it. Stamina loss, obviously how much stamina it uses per swing. Degradation Max is how much durability an object has, and it's a scale. Okay, Degradation Max is a scale. Any scale you put on, you want to put a tag. The perk that controls quality of objects that you build, you want that to have a tag. If you don't put this tag on there, you will never be able to make a level 2 or a level 3 quality, and it won't change, unfortunately. You also need to put that tag on the recipe itself, by the way. But the tags here apply to the value range. So the value range, you can see the tier 1 to 6 applies this value range. So it will scale linearly the degradation between those two. It'll sort of, what's the word? Lerp? It'll lerp them. So it'll scale those things between the two. Degradation per use is how much it obviously used. They just recently changed this to be one per use across the board on all tools and guns. Max range and block range, that's how far away things can be to be effective with the tool that you have. So you can't be any more than 2.2 meters, basically, from what object you're doing. And the block range is if you're specifically pointing at a block, how far away it can be before you apply to it. So you have to be at least closer than 2.5 blocks. Mod slots is kind of shows you an example where the tier and the value can be separated across the entire thing. So the tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 give these values for the mod, how many mods you can apply to the thing. Okay, so mod power bonus is just modifiers. If you install a mod into this, it's going to add 10% to the entity damage and the block damage. Even if the mod you're installing doesn't affect entity damage or block damage, the fact that it's modified will affect it. Okay, and it's also going to make it more valuable because it's modded. Entity damage, block damage, degradation max. These, okay, are applied at a random value. Okay, percent add. So that's why when you get tools or weapons, you can get a level 5 gun or tool that has better stats than a level 6 because of these values here. Yeah, it's kind of I don't even know how to think about that, but it sucks. So these are just randomized. These are just randomizing the stats. Basically, this block here. D block repair amount. These are D is usually display. So this is when you click on a tool, what stats are displayed. So pretty much all the tools follow that general set of examples. Now if we go down to, let's go through, those are all tools, melee tool, auger. A lot of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Melee tool, wrench, those are all tools still. If we look at wrench though, let me look at wrench really quick. Melee tool, wrench. This is where that harvest value comes in. Okay, harvesting tools. Okay, what are you actually harvesting? So if we go down to harvest count, there it is. So this indicates harvesting tools, and the value in a param. There is documentation that lightly talks about what these are, and each category of tool is different, but that indicates harvesting tools. Well, that basically is if you're pounding on something. And if we come down here to harvest count, depending on the tag, this is Salvaged Harvest. This tag tells you how much you're going to get if you're like dismantling your car. Okay, Salvaged Harvest is one of the perks that you can apply to, is salvage, like the Salvage Master or whatever it's called. That is where this comes from. And harvest count is modified depending on what that is. And that's coming up in a few minutes, that file. We got to go through a few more here. But going on, let's see. There's so many things. So knife, machete. If we go down to the harvest, you'll see butcher harvest now. So different tools have different harvest values and a different tag associated with the harvest. So if you want to add your own sweet knife and you want it to be super, super awesome, you just have a tag like this in there, and the value you want to set up like 5. You're gonna get 5 times the amount of stuff that you're gonna get baseline from using that tool. So these are weapons. Weapons, pretty much the same thing. This is where you get damage modifiers from weapons. And if we go to my items, one of the things I do is I override the damage modifier for headshots to be pretty high. So here, items, item, name equals gun pistol, effect group with the name equals gun pistol. I want to add this headshot bonus line right here. A passive effect, damage modifier, %add. I'm adding 175 to 500% headshot damage. The tags head. That's an internal reference to the code that calculates where you hit something. That's the tag. That's where that comes from. So I just go through all of the guns and affect all of the damage modifiers. And let's see. Then I add the same sort of effect to the bows and the crossbows, because the bows, when you shoot a bow, the bow itself doesn't really apply headshot damage. It's an arrow. So it's the arrow that actually does the damage. It needs the headshot damage bonus, and that's what that does. It goes through here and edits. I don't edit the club or the bat. I don't really edit much melee stuff. Spear, I don't really edit those at all. Let's see. Sledgehammer. None of the melee tools I really had any desire to affect. Oh god, there's just so much. Paint tool, really? Wire tool? Where are my torch? No. There's the gun pistol. So that damage modifier, if you go through here, there is no damage modifier for headshot damage, which is why I needed to do the append. So it appends onto this effect group right down here. It just adds this tag to do that headshot damage, and that applies in the game. So by all means, use my mod. I try to make it pretty easy to read, but a lot of this stuff can be edited. So let's see. Any questions? Are items like Seal Tools locked behind a game stage when it comes to finding them in loot? Yes, the loot can be the different game stages for loot can define different loot groups. So lower loot groups might not apply or even have a lower probability. Likely it's just a lower probability. So you have to get up to a certain game stage before you start getting into that probability scale. So that's likely the reason why you're not seeing steal before a certain time, because the probabilities just are not in your favor. You might have a 0.1% chance of finding a steal tool when you first enter the game. Doesn't make it impossible, absolutely not, just makes it highly, highly unlikely. Okay, so what else? I mean, there's so much stuff in this, like all of the weapons, all of the things, there's all your hands, melee hand. So, yeah, you could go in here and say, you remove all the bleeding chances, because I hate zombies hit you and all of a sudden you're bleeding to death. So you can come in here and remove this buff injury bleeding zombie. You could remove all of these from the game itself, so no zombie would make you bleed out. Unfortunately, it pretty much applies to everything, because the zombies are in here, but also all the animals are in here as well. But anyway, so let's see. All the hands, so many hands. There's the ammo. Okay, here's the ammo. Like all the items, there's hundreds and hundreds of items. They're all in here, and you can edit all of them. Corn and blueberries and all of the meals, and how much food applies to meals, and how much, like, it's just insane how much stuff. So we're gonna move on from items. That's enough of items. Okay, now I'm going to jot down the time. I will gladly answer any specific questions. There is just too much in that file to try to cover everything. I mean, it would take so long. Localization, I'm going to skip that. Loot, we've already covered a little bit. Let's just do a refresher. Again, loot containers. This is where the probability comes from. So you have base probability templates. Low levels, you're going to have a very low probability of finding anything good. Depending on the template used, I'm not sure if you want to go through here and sort of, it's a daisy chain of probabilities and daisy chain of loot templates. So it's just a matter of coming here and being patient enough to decrypt a lot of this stuff. But so you have quality templates, you have probabilities around those, and then you have those probability templates are using right here. So whenever you add the item that has quality on it, so a level 2 gun, a level 3 iron boots, that's where your templates come in. Now, the overriding templates is the quality that you get base probability. So when you first enter the game, what are the odds that you're going to get anything when you open something, and it's 25%. So again, yeah, loot probabilities is just a quagmire. I'm not going to get in too depth in it. Materials we've already covered. If I open up my F18 stainless steel materials, so you can see I make the stainless steel material very, very stable, very explosive resistant, and then the max damage is 20,000. So materials, you can edit materials, you can add materials, you can do a lot of stuff in here. But again, you're limited by 15 blocks on a side. There's no way the game can support more than that. Which is, it's a really crappy limitation. I hate that that's the limitation. I understand why programmatically. Like as a programmer, I understand why, but it just sucks because big builds are very hard to do when you're limited by that. All right, so that takes care of materials. Miscellaneous, not really much in here that you ever want to edit. The smells were in here, but they've since removed all of that stuff, so not really much to do in there. Music, it's pretty self-explanatory. Don't really want to edit much of this. Now let's get into, let's see, NPC. Yeah, again, not really much in here that we need to deal with. Paintings, those are whatever, those paintings that you see around in the game. Paint ID. So I'm not sure. Texture ID. You could probably modify some of those. Maybe the game loads them. Okay, one person had a question. How to make skills values. I'm not sure. Not sure how that how to make skills value 0. Skills value 0. If Daniel is still on, I would like some more information on that, because progression is really where you deal with skill points, skill value, all of that stuff is in progression. And so your root node is progression. Inside of that, you have a block of level that has a bunch of baseline things that you can edit. And then it has an attributes block. Beyond an attributes block, it has skills. Okay. Past skills, it has perks. Skills are really subcategories of attributes. So yeah, they're you can see attributes are parents. So skills are children of attributes. Perks are basically children of skills. It's just how the UI is organized. And perks is really where the meat of all of that stuff is at. And where all of the settings, when you buy, level 2 minor 69er, what does that do? And that's all inside of the perks. So the effect groups, setting up the requirements, setting up the effects, all of that stuff is in here. One of the things I did in my mod is re-add the ability to make level 6 stuff again. And I did this without being generic because I really didn't want to be generic, just in case something went bad. I didn't want to mess it up. So each perk, Deadeye, Demolitions, Javelin, each one of these dictates the crafting tier that you can do. And the way to read this, if we go to progression, let's go to Deadeye. You can see here's the passive effect crafting tier. The operation is a base add. So you start at 0, right? And then you start adding, there's 5 levels to these. And the base add adds on to that. You basically start, you don't start at 0, you start at 1. You always are able to craft level 1. That's why when you first enter the game, the first stone axe you make is level 1. The next perk of crafting tier adds 1 to that. Okay, the next perk adds 2 to that. And so you can see here, levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives you values of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And so what I do is I go through the value and I make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that makes it so the maximum amount of, when you max out on that perk, you can make the best quality stuff. And this file is also fairly self-explanatory and pretty much readable by if you're new, you can sort of make out what this stuff is doing. So, lockpick time, your percent subtract. So between levels 1 and 5, you're scaling between a point. Let's see, you're scaling from roughly a 9% to a 33% subtraction of how long it takes. Now, the UI might tell you differently, but these values, these numbers don't lie. So your lockpick break chance, you're subtracting 25% from breaking your lockpicks. I'm not even sure. I think that's right. as far as the help goes. So yeah, pretty much everything in here is straightforward. So your perk minor 69er is a common one to edit. And this is the perk name that's referenced in the tags, the tags in your items. Perk minor 69er. So holding items has tags. Perk minor 69er. So if they have a tag that's this tag, go ahead and apply these changes to it. So you could have the final level of a perk do something crazy for helping get that far. The other things that are in here are all the books. And I tried to make the skills, the book skills, purchasable. See, base skill point cost equals 0, means you can't purchase it. I tried to go through here and make all the base skill point costs equal 5. Still couldn't purchase it. I went through all the UI stuff. I worked for like 3 or 4 hours trying to get the books purchasable, and it had absolutely zero luck at all. But all of those book perks are in here as well, if you want to go through and change things. Looks like this one, perk of art mining. Once you complete the art of mining, it looks like you're able to do like 10,000 block damage to ore. I forgot what that description read, but looks like you're guaranteed to break ore in one swing. Pretty amazing. So yeah, lots of things you can do. There's so much potential here. We're going to move on. I want to get to the question that Death asked here. Quality info. I want to play around with this. I want to see if I can add a quality. I want to see if I can add a 7 and make weapons and stuff go up to 7. I'm not sure. Quests, I'm not going to cover that. Recipes, pretty straightforward. Recipe name is the thing that you get. Count is how many you get. Craft time can be overridden or auto-calculated. Learnable tag is if it's unlocked via a perk or something like that. Workbench crafting. You want to any workbench craft you may want to apply that. That cheapens. There's a perk that makes certain recipes cheaper, but you need to use the tag in the recipe in order for that to apply. But craft area can be workbench. I think there's one called forge. I think there's a lot of workbench stuff in here. Let's see. I thought for sure. Yeah, craft area forge. And there's a chemistry station. That's the other one. Okay. So in a forge, unit iron, unit clay, the unit stuff is what is smelted inside the forge. So look at other forge recipes for cross-referencing that. But if you want to change recipes, this is the file that you edit. And I have a recipes XML in my mod that does just that. Is this still the stainless steel mod? Recipes. So there's a bunch of changes to recipes and adding more. So the append Xpath recipes, it just appends recipes onto the bottom of the list. So I have a solar bank. There's my weed cleaver, quick axe. I add various recipes that just make life a little easier in multiplayer. But changing the amount of certain ingredients, pretty easy. Changing the count of how many, like resource springs, I want to make 4 at a time instead of 1 at a time. Like pretty simple stuff. Look at my mod for a reference. Pretty easy to read. Okay. And then RNG mixer, we're not going to get into that. Sounds. This is This would be where the question comes from. Could you make me load this on a generator? Let's see if we can do a search. Generator. Generator start, generator run, generator stop. So he wants to lower the sounds or make it quieter for running. Okay, let's copy this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it in here because these tags are all out of order here. So every time you see the slash and then greater than, that's the end of the tag. So that is what that actually looks like. A little easier to read. So noise scale, crouch noise scale, local crouch volume scale. These are all volumes. These are all good things to look at. Audio source. Right here, clip name. Generator run LP. There is a way to search for that. Let's find in files. No, I didn't want that. Let's go generator run LP. So searching and finding in files, very, very nice. That tells you everywhere where something has been. So this is the only place that tag appears. It's the only place it's used. Now, if we want to quiet that up, noise scale. Let's look at other values. Local crunch. So noise scale must be in here. Let's see, audio clip, max voices, max repeat rate. Yeah, I don't. There is no noise. It's weird that this isn't referenced in the XML. It's really, really weird. Generator run. Yeah, it's really bizarre that the blocks XML doesn't reference this. Sound data node generator run. This is the only place that it appears. I wonder if well, one thing you could do is turn loop off. So let me run through what that would look like. Let me get my example up. Wait, where's my example? Oh, where's my example? Okay, new folder. So every mod has to have a generic root node. So we're gonna call this no gen looping. Okay. All mods have to have that. You have to have a wrapping root node around your mod. So this is going to have to be named the same name of the file that you're wanting to edit. So go into wherever you're keeping your 7 days mods. So 7 days mod config, and then we're editing the sounds XML. So it has to be named sounds XML. Oh no. It has to be named sounds XML, but I apparently already have one. What do I have in here? Ah, yes. I turned the looping off. The same exact thing can be done. Let me just paste that in here. So, the sounds is the root node. That's where this comes from. Okay, inside of that is a sound data node, which is where this comes from. And we want to get to the specific generator one, which is generator run, which is the name of that sound data node. Okay, sound data node generator run / audio clip, which is right here. Okay, and then we want the loop attribute. Okay, this attribute, we want to set that to false. So this code right here should make it so it doesn't loop that audio. The other values in here you can play around with. If you really want to play around with them, you can turn noise scale down 0.05 if you wanted. You can set all of these values down. The max voice is basically how many audio clips can run at the same time. So the lower that value, the choppier your audio is going to be, and the weird you'll get some weird audio crossing. But yeah, I don't want to edit that. No. So this little clip right here should turn the looping, so it'll play once and then it'll stop. That's what it should do. Loop equals false. Okay, that really takes care of the sounds. Because I mean, it's basically just constant repeat of values. I mean, there's just so many in here, different clips, and I mean, it's basically the same thing all over the place. You know, go crazy, have fun. Almost done. Spawning the XML. Let's see what this one is. All right, so spawning. This is just the generic. It looks like what zombies spawn in what biomes. So there's your spawning biomes, and then your entity spawners, farms, entity spawner. So we've gone through a lot of steps of spawning. A lot of this game has multiple steps of things to do before before you get to the actual thing that spawns something. So spawn extra small, spawn small, spawn medium. I like the comment here. I like those. Those are nice. Very professional. But basically just in general dictating what spawns, what time they spawn. You know, if you're wandering around the forest and there's not enough zombies for you, this is a file that you can go crazy in. Traders. Traders is a file that dictates the groups of things that traders can trade, how many they keep, what they stock. There are a few different large categories of traders. There are categories of traders that are more resource based. There are some that are more weapon based, and this just indicates all of the different things that they can trade. The probability that they trade, the quality that they have, the chance of mods being installed on them. You know, basically down the line, it's very similar to loot in how it's structured, but it's just when you open a trader up, what does he have to offer? And I have edited this in my mod. Let's open traders. Okay, so I override general resources group, not a specific trader, just the group of things, and I make him stock more brass and animal fat because he's stocking like 20 brass, and it's like, why are you stocking 20 brass? That does not help anybody. So he's the value of the brass doesn't change. You still have to pay through the nose for it, but he's got more of it. That's more of it is good because and especially in multiplayer games, a lot of these edits are multiplayer game based. Because everybody's using ammo, you're going to need a lot of brass. So here, this is adding, again, it's got more bone and glue just in case you run out in multiplayer mode. This down here removes, these are remove tags. These are removing fibers and wood, and this is removing things out so they no longer stock these things. Okay, I don't want to stock these. By removing these, you give a little higher probability of other things in the list, like animal fat, actually being stocked. Because there's fewer things to select on a list. That makes these things more likely to be stocked. Now, I mentioned before, I tried to make the book perks purchasable at like 5 points apiece, and I could not get it to work. I worked for hours trying to get it to work, and I couldn't do it. So what I did instead is I upped the books that are in a trader as well as in the loot lists. So if we go to loot containers, loot group, perk books, I add a 5 count. So the set attribute Xpath or command adds an attribute that wouldn't otherwise be there. Okay, so the perk books loot group does not have a count on it in vanilla. There's no count on there, but I wanted to add it. So I added a count of 5. So when you open like a bookshelf, it will load 5 books. Guaranteed. If the dice roll, if the random number generator says yes, we need to select from this group, it will select 5 books from the list and put them in there. However it does that. That's what that count does. But the set attribute adds the attribute that wasn't already there. So rather than adding a count that wasn't, I had to add the count because it wasn't there originally. So between the traders stocking more books and the bookshelves giving more books, you're far more likely to be able to finish the collection of a lot of those really juicy perks that you can get from books. Otherwise, it is a nightmare. I spent like 2 days on our private server trying to collect all the books. I went to the traders over a period of... I went to the traders 3 different times. I went to all the Crack-A-Book areas 2 different times, and I still was desperately short of all of the books. And I thought, this is a little too grindy, so I edited it, and I made it my own. So I really need to get that sounds too out of there. But all right, so we are not going to cover any UI stuff. Utility AI, I don't think I've ever looked in here. Yeah, I don't ever remember needing to edit anything in here. These are just AI commands. I mean, feel free, go through and call hog wild in there. Vehicles, this could be a useful one. So Gyrocopter, all of the base stats, you can come in here. Root node is vehicles. Vehicle at name equals vehicle gyrocopter. And then, slash property. And then the property at name equals whatever, velocity max. And then add value, and you can set the value to whatever you want. And that will edit the gyrocopter. Of course, you can go through and just do all of the things that you want to the vehicles. They tried to add a blimp, but it didn't work. This joke blimp thing doesn't actually work. So yeah, all the vehicles in here. You know, if you want to add different amounts of storage on these, I'm pretty sure that would be in here somewhere. Let's try to find that. It's probably the one thing that people would want to edit the most. Chassis, seat, engine, gear. Wow, there's a lot of engines in here. Storage, there it is. Property class storage. Parent part. Slot type basket. That does not look like it indicates how big the storage is. Slot type basket. Let's look at another storage. You know, if you're learning by example, comparing and contrasting different storages. Those are all baskets as well. I know the 4x4 truck has a bigger storage. Storage. Basket, yeah, those are all the same. So what dictates how much storage is in it? I bet you... Okay. Chassis. If I remember right, vehicles would be an entity class. Yep, vehicles are in here. Let's do mini. Vehicle mini bike, okay. Loot list alive. 77. Vehicle motorcycle. 78. 4x4 truck. 79. So if we go to loot. Loot. I need to find those IDs again. Okay. So they're actually labeled, which is nice. This dictates how big the the storage is. So bicycle has a 9x1 storage, 9 across and just one row. Mini bike is 9x3, so you have 3 rows. Motorcycle is 9x4. 4x4 truck is 9x9, and the gyrocopter is 9x5. So you could go in here and edit these loot containers with IDs 76, 77, 78, and 79, or 76, 77, 78, and 80, and make them all 9x9s. So all the vehicles have huge amounts of storage. Vehicle storage max is 90 slots. So obviously you can't go over that. And 9x9 is 81 when you're really close to that. So the most is you could do is 9x10 or 10x9. So you know you're close to max with a 9x9. So yeah, that's how you edit the loot or the storage size of a vehicle is through the loot container, which is referenced in entity classes. Loot list alive. Okay, I know that was not a question that anybody asked, and we don't really have that many people in here, but you know it's a question that has been asked. Weather survival is basically just is a very short, like how. Oh, my voice is starting to go. then all of these have comments. How much do you have to be surrounded before being considered inside? 15%. So, or yeah, 15% surrounded before being inside, which is why you can stand at a doorway of something and still get wet. A lot of these not really useful, not really editable in here. I would rather you'd rather edit something somewhere else. Not really worth doing that. The XML text file is a great file, but it has a lot of data from really old alphas. A lot of stuff is listed as previous alphas. There's some little tidbits in here that are even like alpha 13 and 14, like really, really old. So be careful about following too much in here, unless it's obviously applies still. But the text file xml.text still absolutely worth a read if you want to learn more about some of the back end stuff. So yeah, see here's alpha 17. That's an old alpha. We're beyond that, but it may still work like this. So farming obviously indicates the fertile level from the materials. And yeah, just peruse this and easily find yourself some information in there. Still worth it. All right, well that runs through almost all of the XMLs. I'm not going to get into the UI just because it's a nightmare. There are lots of people on the forums that they specialize in UI mods and they really, really dive deep into them. I am not one of them. I use the mods that they use or that they make because I just don't want to get it. It's a quagmire of tables and old. If anybody edited old HTML files where it was all tables and how many column spans or this individual cell and how many rows span, like it is. It's hard to even describe how little I want to go into that. The last thing is, if you're making a mod, they changed where your icons go. So if we look at my Alpha 17 mods here, my main mod had the config directory, which is where all the XMLs go into, and it had an item icon directory, and had a mod info XML. Mod info XML is really what directs the game to load the mod itself. Okay. Item icon directory has moved. Okay. Now, in the Alpha 18 version, you need a UI atlases directory. Inside of that, you need an item icon atlas directory. And inside that is where all your icons are. And now you can do high res 160 by 160 icons, and the game will handle them just fine. But you still need the mod info XML, and so yeah, all good things. Basically just you can copy and paste XML or the data that's in it and make your own mod. There's all my. I'm going to delete the sounds too. I don't need that on there. But that's all of the XMLs in my mod that you can download. But yeah, that. Unless there are questions, if there are any questions, please ask them now. And otherwise, this long-form tutorial stream, I'm going to cut it there. doesn't look like there's really any questions. I'm sure once this thing is finished and rendered and I link it in the forums, people are going to just have tons and tons of questions. Oh, there's Jacob. Any advice on pointing to custom sounds? I'm sure there are mods out there that have custom sounds. I don't know of any offhand, but I know that it's been done. So I would suggest browsing the forums and let's open a new window and go to 7 Days Forums. So the 7 Days Forums, you have game modification. I mean, you have tutorials and guides, but most of my knowledge I always get from going through mods that are out already. So there's tons and tons and tons of mods in here. And many, many pages. Some obviously are up to Alpha 18, but a lot of the old, I mean, really the only thing that changed that most people are going to run into is where the icons go. That's the only thing that changed between alphas. So if you find a mod that adds stuff, and I know there's a farming mod that adds a bunch of like new 3D models and sounds and stuff like that. Like tons of items. Like really, that little image does not help anybody, sir. But yeah, there's tons of stuff in here, and you know, my mod is one that you can use to learn some basics, and then there are lots of mods in here that touch on more advanced topics. And if you go to the tutorials and guides, there's prefab tutorials, porting objects from Unity to load into the game, custom. There is a tutorial for GUIs. I just have never had the need to go into it. Creating and exporting models, and there's lots of ones in here. I want to see if there's an audio one specifically. Train biome. Set bundles. You might have to load it into a Unity asset bundle and then have the game load that. I know it's possible, but it's going to take some work to reference the asset bundle and to like what name you give it and all that kind of stuff. I have no really experience going into Unity at all, but I think that's kind of what you're going to have to do if you want to start adding big assets like that. You may not have to, but you know, sounds, the game is going to have to load those in advance and queue those up and know how to edit those. I don't envy the amount of work that's going to take, but I'm pretty sure you're going to need to load in an asset bundle unless you can find a mod that can do it. If you can find a mod that can do it without it, then phenomenal. All right. Any other questions? And obviously, I have my own Discord server. There's a link in the description. If you guys have questions, I would much rather answer them on Discord than on YouTube. Trying to bounce back and forth with comments on YouTube, I just do not want to deal with that. Farming expansion. I think this is the one. Yeah, see, he adds like cows and stuff. So yeah, this is one. Definitely look at this one and how he does it. If you have any further questions, please ping me on Discord. and I would be glad to help. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and see everybody on Saturday. Saturday is the big stream, big multiplayer stream. We'll be playing some more 7 days on our new map. So yeah, look forward to that. All right, goodbye.